Initial Thoughts is a spoiler-free movie review series. All opinions are my own. Hi everyone, welcome back to Initial Thoughts, a series in which we talk about films as and when they are released. Today's film we're talking about is Fast X, the 10th, or 11th if you count Hobbs and Shaw, Fast and Furious movie, which is surreal to say. Which is directed by Louis Leterrier, hope I got that right, and stars Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, and Jason Momoa. So here we are again. Another Fast and Furious movie. Another that was supposed to be part 1 of 2, that I have now read is now part 1 of 3. And by the time the next movie comes out, it'll be a 5-part story. And we'll probably get another 10 Fast and Furious movies. 2 years ago, in 2021, you might remember, if you've been on the channel from basically the start of Initial Thoughts, one of the earliest movies I talked about was Fast 9. The cinemas had just reopened about a month or two, and we had got some pretty good early releases. Around that time we had things like A Quiet Place Part 2, we had... there was a few stinkers around then as well, but there was kind of mixed results. But one that sticks around from that era, in my mind, was Fast 9. And does it stick in my head because it was great? Oh, no. It sticks in my head because it is not very good, to put it very mildly. Fast 9 is the worst Fast and Furious movie, and that is saying something. Because, yes, there's been some decent ones, and when we talk about Fast and Furious, there is good ones, and it's kind of hard to think about that when you see such drivel on screen sometimes, but Fast 5's a great film. Is it a masterpiece? Is it a 10 out of 10? No, it's not. No, nowhere near it. But is it a really enjoyable action film? Yeah, Fast 5's good fun. And you could probably extend that to Fast 6 and maybe a decent amount of Fast 7 in certain regards. But anything from Fast 8, and let's be honest, we're already at 8 movies in a franchise. The fact that it just keeps going. Then you had Hobbs and Shaw, which I thought was fine, but nothing, didn't blow me away. But the whole thing about these movies, and I think I touched a little bit on this when I was talking about Fast 9, which is, it's not, the spectacle is gone. There's no shock factor. The whole movie, you become numb to action. Mindless, over-the-top action. And usually, if it was a movie like this, and of course that is the intention by the direction of the movie, which is, the story's not so good, and we'll get to that, but, the action, look at the action! Look at the cars jumping through space in some cases. That doesn't... It wears off very early, is what I'm trying to say. Because you become very numb very early on in these movies now. If you've been watching more and more of them, if for some reason the first action movie of these that you've ever seen is something like Fast 9 or Fast 10, you might go, oh my god, this is amazing, the way he jumped that car through that building, through that house, through that skyscraper, into that other car that exploded but then still survived. And it's just... we talked recently about John Wick Chapter 4, which is action gunfighting. And it's clearly a detailed craft, whereas Fast and Furious is just, how can we one-up the craziness? That's all this is. Because let's talk about the story. And you're probably thinking, is he talking about just Fast 9, or is he talking about Fast 10, or Fast X, or is he talking about them all? Kind of a bit of both. Because it's hard to differentiate between some of these movies. Some are better than others. And here's something I will say, because you're probably thinking I'm being fully negative here. Fast X is better than Fast 9. Big thumbs up. Way, it's better than Fast 9. Also, so is driving your car headfirst into a wall. So, take of that what you will. Because there is some parts of Fast X which are certainly... I got more out of it than I did of Fast 9. Is it infinitely better? Is it a return to form? Is it as close to Fast 5 as we've seen? Absolutely not. It's still far away. You know, that Fast 5 and the quality of that movie is a dot in the distance for these movies. And for it to start this kind of 1 of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 part story, even though the story is essentially the same thing. You know, it's not like... You know when you get these big anthology series that have different parts and they're kind of segregated off? You know, even like something like the MCU, where they're all the different, you know, trilogies or you know, sequels, you know, like Ant-Man, there's 3 movies, or Iron Man, or Guardians, which we talked about recently, where they have their own thing, and then they came together and they had Infinity War and Endgame, which all of those things seem... They're in their own, but then they expand into a bigger story. The thing about Fast X, and for it to feel like this new trilogy of films, even though it has the same characters, it doesn't feel in any way different. It's exactly the same. You know, some of the bits are more enjoyable, and I'll talk about them a little bit in a minute, but something that really occurred to me in this movie more than any others: Dominic Toretto, which is Vin Diesel, he's the worst character in these movies. And not in the sense of like character arc and the character that's been built, but just in the case of one-dimensional. You know, he is one... His character has not changed. There's one film where he gets like controlled by the enemy and then he turns against them, which was like, what, was that Fast 8? Fast 7? Something like that. I don't know. But that was the only time his character changed. Every single movie, you could nearly carbon copy his lines, his story arc. All it is to care about somebody and teach them the meaning of family. And that's it. That's all it is. There's nothing new. There hasn't been for about 6 films for his character, and with him being the lead and being the focus and being the story, whether it's him looking after his son, or looking after his brother that's appeared after 15 years that we've never heard of, or looking after his wife that died but didn't die, but did die but didn't die. Like, there is nothing new. There's nothing. Why not try and put the boat out? Why not just actually try something different? Because Fast X, yes, is better than Fast 9 as in regards of watchability and enjoyment. Because let's get to the thing that actually is different and is really enjoyable, is Jason Momoa. And you've probably heard that if you've heard people talking about this movie already. But Jason Momoa is head and shoulders the best part of this movie. He is... Everything good about this really stems from him. Everybody else is doing their carbon copy. Generic lines, playing the same roles, doing the same whether it's, you know, it's the same characters making the same jokes and at each other's expense. You know, you've got that kind of 3, where you've got Missandei and Ludacris and Tyrese, and the 3 of them are just making the same jokes that they have done for like 6 years. And then they bring in Hans, who was dead, but he's not dead, and he clearly died, but he didn't die. You know, there is no consequence. There is no... Why should we care? Why should we care when any character gets into any harm? Because they're all superheroes. Even if someone is clearly dead, they're not dead. What's the point? You take away the jeopardy. And yes, you might say, why are you going into this thinking it's like any other movie? But like, it's so hot. You can go in and switch your brain off. You can do, and it definitely falls into that category. And I enjoy those movies for what they are. And I went into this with as much open-mindedness as I could. But when you just be so you lack the self-awareness when you're making a movie like this. Because it is that thing, fool me once, you know, why are we doing the same thing? Why do the audience even care? And that's what it boils down to. A car can only be jumped through fire so many times before we stopped, caring, and we get used to the car being in the flames. That's what it is. There's no shock factor because everything's a shock. Do you get what I mean by that? Hopefully that comes across well, because that's what it feels like. The whole film is just stupid. All of these. And yes, that this might be like a carry-on from what I would class as my mental breakdown talking about Fast 9 2 years ago. So yes, this is a carry-on of that, and probably some of my points overlap with them. Apologies if I'm going over myself. But when I talked about Jason Momoa there, the reason he's enjoyable is because he actually... It's so clear that he's came into this, and I've only ever really seen him in semi-serious roles. So for him to come into this and clearly try to go over the top and have fun and really... he seems like he's the only person really enjoying himself. And everybody else in these movies are so... I suppose you could probably extend that to John Cena a little bit too. And I think I said that in Fast 9, where he was trying to be serious then, and he just isn't that way. Whereas in this film, he's more of, kind of his WWE persona, his peacemaker persona, where he's kind of jokey and laughy, and he was far better in this too. So they were the two that I enjoyed. But when you talk about the core characters, Michelle Rodriguez continues to be exactly the same as she was 500 years ago in the first film. I mean, Charlize Theron, she is too good of an actress to be in these movies. Oh my god. And Brie Larson gets added in, and her character gets written into the story, and she does very minimal. Not that I don't like Brie Larson, she's fine and enjoyable in some performances, but I don't think anybody came out of this movie, bar like Jason Momoa, and as I said, maybe a little bit of John Cena, which can go, okay, well, I came in, I gave it, I really thought I brought something to this movie, and then that's it. So everybody else is either doing a carbon copy of what they usually do, and that applies no more than to Vin Diesel, because his motivation has just never changed for these movies. It's always the same thing. His reactions, his lines, his salute me familia, him drinking Corona, having a barbecue with his family, that just is ever changing, but it's always the same. If you get, it's just, the whole movie's just, it's numbing. You're numb to it all. If you've seen these all, there's nothing new. The only thing new is it's a part 1 of 2 or 3. But even that, they don't have any rules. Fast X is supposed to be the last one. It was always agreed that Fast 10 was going to be the last one. And by the way, when we're talking about that, this movie should have been called Fast 10 Your Seatbelts. I heard that on Twitter, and it should have been called that. What a wasted opportunity. Like, if we're not having fun with this, what are we doing? This is my overall point. It's clearly supposed to be a silly series, so stop taking it so seriously. That's my biggest irk. If they're going to be over the top with everything, just do that. Bring more comedy elements and just talk about it. Be self-aware. Stop trying to make a serious movie that has cars flipping over each other and one's going into space in the last one. Oh! I knew this would happen. I knew I would lose my mind talking about this. Fast and Furious. I was going to call it Fast and Furious X, because they don't even call it Fast and Furious anymore. Everything about these movies irk me. They rub me up the wrong way, and they just annoy me. Because it's always the same useless crap that we see every time. Some are more preferable than others. And this will get a slightly better score than Fast 9, because Fast 9's the worst one. This isn't the worst one. This is probably on par with Fast 8, which is marginally better than, Fast 8 and Fast X are probably they are marginally better than Fast 9. But they're a long way away from Fast 5, which was the best one. And two more movies, which will probably end up being more. Vin Diesel will be in one of these cars at the age of 95, filming Fast and Furious 437. And I'll probably be there watching it, because I don't know. Anyway, let's get into rating time. As you can imagine, it's not going to be that glowing of a rating. But what I will say is, when I talked about Fast 9 and I gave it a 3 out of 10, and looking at that, I would still give that a 3 out of 10 because it's so little to love. So much more bad than good. For Fast X, I think a lot of the stuff I was venting at there is my feeling on the series as a whole. This movie in isolation, I think if they do alright with the next part, or the next 2 parts, and they make it like a semi-enjoyable, if they bring more characters like Jason Momoa, and they clearly stop taking themselves so seriously, that's what's needed. We're sick of hearing about the values of family. We get it. You like your family, and that's it. that's the whole story arc of every movie. You've got to fight for your family. You got to fight for who you love. Oh, isn't that lovely? Fast X, I'm going to be... this might shock you. I'm actually going to be quite nice too. Because I thought, am I going to give it like a 4 and something out of 10? I'll give it a 5 out of 10. The reason I'm giving it a 5 out of 10 is because of Jason Momoa, a little bit of John Cena, and that's about it. And the story's not as unbearable as Fast 9. And as I say, it's about on par with Fast 8 when they're jumping over submarines. The whole thing, Fast and Furious as a whole, I am pretty sick of. But I have to be fair, this is definitely better than Fast 9. But only for those reasons mentioned. The same problems are there. It's still as stupid. The story is still very minimal, and it's just what kind of excuse can we get to show off a random drag race or a random car exploding? You just become numb to it all. In about 2 years' time, or a year, or whenever the next part comes out, I'll be here. And I'll probably lose my mind just as much. And yeah, that has been another breakdown. And not breakdown in analysis, I mean mental breakdown, talking about a Fast and Furious movie. That's been my thoughts on Fast X. I feel like I'll be doing this and having this kind of reaction to Fast and Furious movies for the rest of time. Anyway, if you enjoyed this and you want to hear me talking about better movies, and I stress that because there's good movies coming out, we've had a lot of good movies this year so far, this has probably been one of the worst. And it's a 5 out of 10. So, make of that what you will. If you want to stick around, I'd appreciate you so much for it. Hit the subscribe, ring the bell, so you'll be notified every time an upload goes up. And if you do, I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Before you go, here are some of my other videos. For updates and information on upcoming videos, the best place to find us is my Twitter. Much love, everyone.